again, the 7900 XTX is an absolute stunning piece of engineering, and it fits my inverted case perfectly and just complements it. However, today we're not going to focus on aesthetics. We're going to focus on how it performs up against the 4090 in Star Citizen. And as always, our system is fully tuned. We're running the 3900K at 5.8 GHz with tuned memory at 4100 MHz. For full description, please take a look in the description below. Just like the 4090 review, we'll be checking out Lorville, Area 18, and Orison to perform exactly the same run, so you can see the 4090 review in the description. And these are the standard settings we'll be using. Everything is set at very high, including clouds, and also we have motion blur on as well. And to make sure that we're comparing apples to apple, the 7900 XTX is overclocked. Now to do so, we had to undervolt the GPU because it only has a 400 watt power budget. This budget gets consumed very quickly, so for us to get any performance benefits, we need to undervolt it, and you can see the results of the overclock right here. Looking at Lorville, we can see at 1080p both GPUs are completely CPU and RAM bound. But what you will notice is that the 7900 XTX is GPU bound in 1440p, meanwhile the 4090 is still CPU and RAM bound. This is a big differentiation between the 4090 and the 7900 XTX. Looking at the GPU utilization graph, we can see that the 7900 XTX only have roughly 25% extra performance budget in 1080p. It's even touching 100% utilization at some point with clouds that's very high. Comparing this to the 4090, which is hovering around 50% and peaks at 80, you can see it has a much bigger performance budget than the 7900 XTX, even in 1080p. So it's only when the 4090 is at 4K is when it becomes GPU bound, but the 7900 XTX is already further GPU bound, and as you can see, it is performing at an average of 40 FPS. Meanwhile, this 4090 is at 70 FPS. This is a 75% performance difference. In Star Citizen, when the clouds are set at very high, it is hammering the 7900 XTX and it simply can't keep up with the 4090. At this point, the 4090 is 75% faster in 4K. If you have a high-end budget for GPUs, all of a sudden the 4090 starts to look like a really good deal because it actually is 75% faster while only costing 55% more than the 7900 XTX. Even though this is a GPU comparison video, what we now have discovered is that even if you have a GPU that is 75% faster than another GPU, the system will still be bottlenecking the performance of those graphics cards. What we can see here is that the 3900K with tuned memory is still holding the performance back of the 4090. What this means is that when we take a look at our previous video comparing 10pounds42's CPU results, we can now conclude that this comparison was a fair comparison because the 4090 did not benefit the performance of the 3900K. That means we're comparing apples to apples when it comes to CPU in the previous video. The reason why I brought that up is because both on Reddit and Star Citizen forums, most people did not get that point. They believe that the 4090 was an unfair comparison because the other systems were using a 4080. So as long as the GPU is not 100% utilized, what you can conclude is that the performance is completely bottlenecked by the RAM and CPU combo. Now, moving to Area 18, which is a planet that doesn't have any clouds, you can see that the 7900 XTX performs much better. However, it becomes GPU bound still at 4K. If you saw the other video of the 4090, we would have seen that the GPU utilization of the 4090 at 4K just a little bit touches 100%. This is why the average is a little bit lower than the others. The 4090 has roughly 10 to 30% more performance to be gained if it was paired with a faster RAM and CPU combo. So with the upcoming 3 cache Ryzen CPUs, we might see that performance boost in these scenes. However, the 7900 XTX is still GPU bound. There's no more performance to be unlocked here. It is only when we include the 4090 at 4K with RAM at 3600 MHz, we're seeing that it has comparable performance to the 7900 XTX in 4K. Orison, the gas giant, or aka the GPU killer, is currently destroying AMD's 7900 XTX at all resolutions. Even in 1080p, the 7900 XTX is GPU bound and is being bound further at 4040p. And looking at 4K, we can see that the 4090 is still 75% faster. When I installed the 7900 XTX, I didn't expect the performance to be that big of a difference. I was expecting anything between 20 to 30% difference between the 4090, and I was expecting that I could actually recommend it as being a much better price option to run 4K in Star Citizen. However, this was completely the opposite. In fact, it made the 4090 look like a better deal, because if you look at the price per frame, you can see that you get more value by using the 4090 for Star Citizen. Now, please note that this is purely for Star Citizen. Performance might improve with driver updates and other tweaks AMD might bring forward, or obviously maybe the tweaks Star Citizen developers will bring forward, we don't know. But at this current stage, this is the performance you can expect, especially if you want to crank the settings to the max. In the grand scheme of things, where does the 7900 XTX fit in any person's build? Well, it's very clear that if your goal is to have the highest possible frame, there's only really one option if that fits within your budget, which is the 4090. I still think the 7900 XTX has a place, and it has a place in comparing it against the 4080. The 4080 is roughly 20 to 30% more expensive than the 7900 XTX, so I highly recommend checking out £10.42's video where he compared those two graphics cards. And if you came this far, I want to say thank you very much, and you know exactly what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, and do all the SEO stuff. But for now, I'll be putting back the 4090. I do specifically cover RAM tuning and CPU overclocking, so if you like that kind of content, please check out how Star Citizen compares between the lowest RAM frequencies and the highest. Check that video out right here.